No temptation has seized you that isn't common for people, but God is faithful. He won't allow you to be tempted beyond your abilities. Instead, with temptation, God will also supply a way out so that you will be able to endure it. So ends the reading of God's holy word.
Well, good morning once again. You've heard it all before. Therefore, because you've heard it all before, you have a tremendous advantage over other people that are not in your shoes. You should have a root system that is so much more developed than theirs, it's unbelievable. It's deeper than anything they can imagine. You definitely have the advantage. What am I talking about? Well, before we get to what I'm talking about, let's talk about what leads you to this point. What actually gives you that advantage? One of the benefits of the computer age that I have discovered is the ability to easily recover that which is digitally stored. I have difficulty finding documents that I wrote last week, let alone something that I've written or something that I should keep that are maybe 10, 20, and 30 years old. Those of you that are organized and more organized than I am are much better off than what I am when it comes to the digital age. Have you seen my office lately? It's an advantage of a digital age, for me it is anyway, that I can find important documents that are several years old. Specifically, those documents are my sermons. I can actually go back and find the first sermon I ever wrote, the first sermon I ever did. That all the sermons I have written over the years. Now, the reason I would like to find these sermons is not for what you might think. You might think that I would like to reuse an old sermon someday. That's not it. You may think that I'd like to check and see if I've already covered a particular topic on a sermon. Actually, that's not it either. I actually have a pretty good memory for what I've talked about in past sermons. You might think that I'm looking at past sermons to dig up some old jokes that I might have, and that's not it either. You see, all I want to do is rediscover what you should have already committed to in your lives in the past. You've already heard all the sermons on what it takes to be Christ-like. You've heard all the sermons that are out there that I've done that call you to action, to become more like Christ, to live like Christ. Having gone through a number of past sermons, I can safely say that you are well educated in that area and that you need not be present at any more sermons. Now wait, don't get up and go. Don't leave on me here. You've heard all that you need to hear in order to be perfect. We all have heard all that we need to hear in order to be a perfect Christian. So the question is, why aren't you? What's bugging you? What's keeping you from being that perfect Christian? You know what it means to love God and neighbor. You know the importance of living the 7 spiritual gifts that Paul's talked about. You know the importance of living Christ-like. You know the importance of the Great Commission that Jesus has given every one of us. You know how to pray. And whether you know it or not, some of you know how to pray in public. You know what it means to remember your baptism. You know why it's important to take your burdens to the cross. You can explain the reasons that we use movies to explain biblical principles. You can explain what the 3 letters in our church stand for. You can explain just what your spiritual gifts are. You can actually evangelize with a total stranger. You have the tools to do that. So why haven't you? Why haven't you lived that perfect Christian life? Because of all these things, you are much more apt and capable of living a perfect Christian life than those people that haven't heard the Word of God. So why haven't you? Why haven't we? So what's keeping us from that perfect life? Now, I know that there can be distractions, and the words distractions bring us to our barbecue this Sunday morning. You may recall we are in the middle of a sermon series on the backyard barbecue, and this week we're talking about the distractions that can occur during a backyard barbecue. You've all had barbecues before, or you've gone to them. You know that there can be distractions. What are some of the distractions that you can have at a barbecue? Pests, right? You can have pests. Now, when I say pests, I'm not talking about small children, Ben. I'm not talking about little dogs like our little Buddy or Maybelline or anything like that. They're not pests. They're family. The pests that I'm talking about, somebody mentioned back here, was bugs. Bugs, big time. Bugs can be pests. What I want to draw out of the insect, if you want to draw the entire insect world out in 30 seconds, plan on having some food cooked outdoors and a bunch of people coming together that all smell differently. And you're going to bring the bugs. Let's face it, bugs are a real problem when all we want to do is cook and eat peacefully with our friends and neighbors. They are pests. And Webster defines a barbecue pest as an insect that attacks people, food, livestock, if you invite livestock to your barbecue, and crops. An annoyance, a menace, a trouble, a problem, a worry, a bother, an irritation, a trial. And we all have trials. Just like the bugs at a barbecue, life's pests can attack us at any time, whether we're ready for them or not. What are life's pests? What are the bugs of life? They are the irritants that we have. They are the bothers. They are the crises, that's a word, that pops up in our life. They are the distractions in our life, the things that can take us away from what we have learned about keeping God in our focus, about being Christ-like, and showing others how to be and how to live as well. I read an article recently on miners, and specifically on coal miners, and how they have two big fears in their life. The first fear that they have, the number one fear that they have, is a fear of a cave-in. They fear an explosion might occur, and that might cause the walls to cave in, and they would become trapped. The second fear that they have, and they all have it, is a fear of a disease called black lung disease. Black lung disease is a real problem in coal mines. Black lung disease is caused by these miners constantly breathing carbons and little tiny specks of coal dust, and it settles into their lungs to where they almost feel like they're suffocating, that they can't get a breath, they can't get oxygen. One of the miners was quoted as saying, "What we fear the most, what can kill us, is the small stuff." Of course, he's talking about those specks of dust, of coal, as the carbons that can do that. But many of us have read the book that's entitled, "Don't Sweat the Small Stuff." In fact, I think a subtitle is, "And It's All Small Stuff." Or we've heard about the book, "Don't Sweat the Small Stuff." It's the small stuff that can ruin our cookout, and it's the small stuff that can take us away from our Christian lives. It can actually kill our walk with God. The distractions in life can take it all away. Everything we've learned every Sunday morning, every good intention we have of living Christ-like can be taken away by these distractions, can be taken away by the small stuff. The acid test of your Christianity is how you handle the little things in life. It's the bottom line. How you handle the little, insignificant irritations and frustrations of life. How you handle the small stuff. In Philippians, Paul says in Philippians 2, do everything without complaining or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure children of God without fault in a crooked and depraved generation in which you shine like stars in the universe. The Bible says that if you have an attitude of being a grateful person, a positive person, not being a complainer, you will be so unique that you will stand out like a star in the dark night. You will be the one in a million, and others will absolutely want what you have because you're so positive. In order to control the bugs at our barbecue, we must first identify these bugs. It doesn't do any good to have a particular spray that's only good for ants. It doesn't take care of mosquitoes, for example. So you've got to identify your bugs, and we're going to do that. We're going to identify the bugs at our barbecue and identify those things in life that are distractions. First, the flies in our life that are, well, other people. Other people can be a distraction. Other people can take us away from our walk with God. Now, I'm not saying you should go up to somebody and say, bug off, because you learned this morning that they can be bugs. I'm talking about relationships. Relationships, of course, with other people. And I'm sure that you remember the commandment that Jesus has given us is to love God and have a relationship with Him, but also to love our neighbor and have a relationship with our neighbor. So we're talking about everybody in your life. Everybody that includes friends, parents, siblings, spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, children, co-workers, bosses, and so on. Anybody else that you run into in life. They can be a distraction to our walk with God, to our perfection as we strive to become perfect and Christ-like. Remember, God calls us to love one another. So when we do, it's an act of obedience to God. We're following His will. But don't forget about God in the process. Jesus said to first love God and then your neighbor, as we've talked about. We just need to make sure we are giving God ample time every day in addition to the people that we have a relationship with. These relationships, in their nature, demand most of the time from us. The relationships that we call our spouse, the relationship we call our wives or our husbands. They are by nature taking most of our time in our life. We just need to make sure that we have God as our focus. And we all know that a couple that has God as their focus, their main focus, their number one priority in life is a couple that stays together. The next bug that we have in our life are the mosquitoes. That's real irritant, isn't it? Mosquitoes are just an ugly bug, and plus they suck your blood and do all kinds of stuff that's just, ugly, and they transmit disease. So we're going to call that distraction work. What we do for a living. What we do for a living plus what we do outside of work that occupies our time. Those activities, those club memberships, those hobbies that we may have. Anything that takes time away from us, or takes time away from God and consumes us. I personally worry about each Sunday morning. I worry about the message that I'm going to deliver. And so work becomes a very important factor in my life. I worry about whether or not you are going to have a kind of message that will stick with you through the week. And that's all well and good, but if I lose sight of the fact that the real purpose, the real reason that you're here is to not only worship with others, but also to have a closer relationship with God, to feel God in your presence today so that you will feel God in your presence all week long. It's not whether or not you have a good message. What's really important and what I can't lose sight of is that the purpose for you today is that you feel closer to your God. The next bug that gets into our way, we'll call the gnat. Gnats are those things, anything that just flies around and does nothing but just always seems to be right there. Always in your face, always in your food. We'll call that particular bug our daily routine. It's the common thing that I allow myself all the time to get in the way of my focus, to get in the way of my time with God. Far too often, we do just squeeze God in when we have some time. And I'm extremely guilty of this. It's so easy to get caught up in all the things that have to be done, to get caught up in our to-do list, to get caught up in the routine that we have of eating and working and sleeping and all the things that we do every single day. Put God in that routine. Make God a part of your day by making him part of your routine. Don't let the routine get in the way of God. Make him part of it. The next distracting bug that we're going to talk about is the bee, and we seem to have those more of a problem around here in the fall. Those yellow jackets that just love to come to your soda and fly around your can and get into your can, and when you take a drink, it's in your can and you get stung in the throat. It's not a good sight. It's ugly. That's a major distraction. So I'm going to talk about those kinds of things as technology, today's technology, and I'm particularly guilty of that. To be honest, this is one that just takes me away from not only my time with God, but from Bonnie and from my routine and everything else. But it's not just technology like sitting down in front of a computer, it's technology like our smartphones. Our smartphones take a lot of our time. It takes a lot of my time. I'm always checking for emails. I'm always checking Facebook to see what's the latest post, to see if there's something good on Facebook that I can use during a sermon, actually. So it takes away our time, and I'm going to throw the television in that category as well. As Bonnie will attest to, TV takes a lot of my time. It distracts me. It keeps me from doing the things that I need to do, and it keeps me from spending time with God. But if you're like me, technology just doesn't stop there. It's every form of media that's out there. So don't try to work God into your schedule. Make God part of your schedule. Try working your schedule around him. Try working the influences and the distractions of technology around your time with God. The next bug we're going to talk about at our barbecue are the ants, and those creepy crawly things that just like to get on food, and sometimes if we're not paying attention, they actually get on us. And those distractions, those ants, I'm going to call ourselves. They're us. We're our worst enemies. Ourselves. The last one that we can talk about in these distractions is us, and it's possibly more likely that we are distracting ourselves more than we actually know. We are by nature easily distracted to not try to do the will of God, and if we live by our nature, we will be easily distracted. We're talking about having some little gumption here, having some strength to fight those distractions that are out there. Get creative. Get rid of the bugs. Don't let them interfere with your time with God. Paul said in Romans that no matter what we do, there will be a constant battle within ourselves between the Spirit and us and the flesh. And that's in Romans 7. That is why we need to constantly allow God to search our hearts and purify it, according to Psalm 139. The first step in overcoming ourselves is to be aware of the fact that we are easily distracted. And finally, I want to put all of these bugs together. And that's going to represent the biggest, probably one of the biggest things we have in life that is going to distract us, and that is our fear. Our fear. I don't mean our fear of the night, or our fear of the boogeyman, or even our fear of insects. I'm talking about our fear to to act and behave like Christ wants us to act and behave. In this country, we see behavior such as those that are becoming Christ-like and that which we hold sacred are ridiculed and mocked in this country. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter if it's green lives or blue lives or black lives or white lives. What matters is Christ's life. Lives matter, but Christ matters more. By keeping Christ as our number one focus in our life, and with Christ we can do anything. We have the strength to do anything. We can withstand our fears of behaving like Christians. We can talk about the fact that we are driven by Christ. And quite often we're not thinking about that, so we need reminders. And a while ago we had a program called I Am Second. It was a movement. People that are new to this church, since we've done that, maybe have noticed on the wrists of some of our people, we have wristbands that say I Am Second. Those are there to remind us who is first in our life. Those are there because we want people that don't know Christ to say, well, what's that mean? And we want to be able to tell them what it means is Christ is number one in our life and we are number two. All of our wants and desires are number two. And that Christ is number one and we're not going to be distracted by bugs, by other people, by our work, by our routine, by our schedules, by ourselves. We're going to keep Christ in our eyes. We're going to keep the Son in our eyes. And by that I mean S-O-N. At our barbecue, and we're not going to be distracted by bugs or anything else. Amen.